Welcome to House of Horrors. Some sins never fade, some souls never rest, and some curses last forever. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones. This is the child who heard the dark. Now let's begin. My name is Daniel. I'm 10 years old. Despite my age, I've seen things most kids couldn't even imagine. Prayers echoing in the silence, shadows flickering in candlelight, and whispers. Most people find these terrifying, but for me, it's just part of my life. The old stone house where I live with my mom is in a historic neighborhood in New Orleans, right across from an ancient church, St. Augustine Church. That's where my story begins. The first time I entered the church with my mom, the overwhelming scent burned my nose. Incense. While she prayed, I wandered between the wooden pews, gazing at the old paintings. But one day something happened, something I didn't notice then, but would later change my life forever. That day I sat in the very back row. As I looked around, I noticed something strange. In front of the stained glass windows, a shadow moved in the dim candlelight. I quickly turned my head, but saw nothing. Maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me, I thought. But then, right by my ear, I heard a whisper. Daniel. I froze. The voice was low and distant, but my name was clear. My heart raced. I turned around, but there was no one there. That's when I felt something in my hand, a piece of paper. I didn't know how it got there, but it was there. On it, written in shaky handwriting, were these words, "Be at the altar. 3 M." My hands trembled with fear. I grabbed my mom's arm and we left the church. I didn't show her the note, but that night, curiosity grew like a shadow in my chest. I tossed and turned in bed until 2:45 a.m. I couldn't resist. I put on my jacket and snuck out into the cold night. The church looked even more terrifying in the dark. The door was open. I stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of burning wax. The stone floor echoed beneath my feet as I walked toward the altar. And then I saw him, a figure in a black robe, face hidden, holding a silver staff. Daniel, the figure said. The voice was calm, yet commanding. Who are you? I asked, my throat dry. The figure pulled down his hood, revealing an aged but gentle face. I am Father Elias, he said. We've been waiting for you for a long time. I swallowed hard. Why me? Because you are special, Daniel. You can hear the whispers. And now you must walk with us. Behind me, the door creaked shut. I turned and saw 2 more figures in black robes. One of them, a young woman, held a white candle. Don't be afraid, she said softly. We are here to guide you. Somehow my fear melted into curiosity. I knelt with them in front of the altar. Father Elias placed his hand on my head and began to pray in a low voice. The air grew heavy. The walls seemed to vibrate. Then I heard it. A faint creak of the door opening again, but no one entered. Or so I thought. That night, my training began. Elias taught me to pray in Latin. The words felt foreign, but they rolled off my tongue with surprising ease. In nomen patris, et filii, et spiritus sancti. The candles around us flickered with each word. Elias leaned down and whispered in my ear. From now on, you will hear the one who haunts you. Do not look at him. Do not speak to him no matter how much he begs. I froze. Who? I asked. Just then I felt cold breath on the back of my neck. A chill crawled down my spine. Slowly I turned my head and saw it, a pale face with hollow eyes and a tattered hood. Its lips moved. "Daniel, help me." I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. Elias gripped my hand, shook his head, and whispered, "Pray, Daniel, just pray." I squeezed my eyes shut and mumbled the prayer. The whispers grew louder. The cold breath circled my neck, but I didn't stop. Minutes later, everything fell silent. I opened my eyes. The figure was gone. Elias stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You passed your first test," he said. "But this is just the beginning. The night whispers have noticed you, and there is no turning back now." When I returned home, I lay awake until morning. My mom didn't ask what was wrong, but I knew she felt the fear in my eyes. For the next 2 nights, I returned to the church to pray with Elias. The whispers grew louder each time, but I wasn't afraid anymore until the 3rd night, when I found a wooden cross hanging on my bedroom door. The words carved into it sent ice through my veins. "We're waiting for you, Daniel, very soon." My name is Daniel. If you're hearing this, you can probably hear the whispers too. Or maybe you're just here for a scary story. But know this isn't just a story. This is my reality. After that 3rd night, I couldn't forget the words written on the cross hanging on my door. "We're waiting for you, Daniel, very soon." Who were they? And why were they waiting for me? I stayed awake all night, convinced that someone was walking outside my window with every gust of wind. By morning, I couldn't wait to get to the church. Maybe Elias could explain it. I wolfed down my breakfast and slipped out without telling my mom. When I reached the church steps, Elias was already there, waiting. His face, as always, was serious. "Come in, Daniel," he said softly. We entered and stood before the altar. In his hands was an old book with faded Latin lettering on the cover, Liber Umbri, the Book of Shadows. "We need to talk about the presence haunting you," Elias said. "You were born with a rare gift. As someone who hears the whispers, you are a bridge between 2 worlds, and some want to cross that bridge." I swallowed hard. "Who are they?" "The shadows," Elias answered. "They're not lost souls. They're older, darker, and now they're after you." Suddenly the air grew cold. The candles flickered. Elias immediately began reciting a prayer. I followed his lead, whispering the Latin words. Then, from behind the altar, a shadow emerged. It had the form of a person, but its eyes were hollow. Its lips moved. "Daniel, come with us." We kept praying. The shadow hesitated, then retreated into the darkness. Elias let out a shaky breath. "We'll protect you," he said, "but they won't give up easily." From that day, my training intensified. Elias and Sister Clara taught me protective prayers. Every night I drew a circle of protection around my bed with salt. Still, shadows appeared behind my window, whispering in the dark. One evening, Elias handed me a small wooden cross. "Keep this with you at all times," he said. "And remember, your prayers are your shield." I hung it around my neck, feeling safer. But a week later, something strange happened. A pale, shadowy hand appeared at my window, tapping lightly. I slowly peeked through the curtain and saw a tall figure in a black cloak. Its face was hidden by a hood, but it was more solid than the usual shadows. "Daniel," said a raspy voice, "come with us. Your place is here." I clutched the cross and began praying. The figure recoiled but whispered before vanishing. "You've already been chosen. You can't escape." The next day, I told Elias. His face turned pale. "This is bad," he said. "You can no longer be left alone." That afternoon, we moved into the church's basement. Elias, Sister Clara, and I stayed there together. It was cold and dim, but I felt safer, at least until that night. Elias had gone out for supplies. Sister Clara was helping me memorize protection prayers when the basement door creaked open. Clara immediately took out her cross. Then we heard it. "Daniel, it's me, Tommy. Let's play." Tommy, my old friend from school who'd gone missing 3 years ago. "Don't move," Clara whispered. "Keep praying." Thick black smoke slithered through the crack under the door. It swirled and formed into a face, Tommy's face, but his eyes were pure black. "Daniel, help me," the voice pleaded. Tears burned my eyes. He'd been my best friend. My hand instinctively reached out until Clara grabbed my wrist. "That's not Tommy," she hissed. "Pray." I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed. The smoky figure screamed and dissolved. Clara exhaled in relief and turned to me. "They've locked onto you," she said, "but you're not alone." When Elias returned, we told him everything. He opened an old wooden cabinet and retrieved a cracked, leather-bound notebook. "This journal," Elias explained, "contains the names of shadow entities. If we know their name, we can resist them." I leaned over and saw the name scrawled in faded ink. Malvaris. Elias's jaw tightened. "That's the entity calling you. It wants to possess you." My pulse quickened. Everything was becoming clearer and more terrifying. I turned to Elias. "How do we stop it?" His eyes were heavy with dread. "You'll have to face it, Daniel," he said, "but you won't face it alone." I wanted to believe him, but as the nights grew colder and the whispers returned, I knew the darkest battle was yet to come. After the day the shadows first noticed me, my life changed completely. I knew I had to stay alert every moment, because Malvaris wants me. Elias constantly reminds me of the power of prayer. Prayer prevents them from communicating with us, he says. But every night as I lie in bed, I hear that whisper, "Daniel, Daniel, you can't escape." That night, while praying with Clara in the basement, Elias came down with an old map in his hand. It showed hidden tunnels beneath St. Augustine Church. His face was grim. "Malvaris might be using the tunnels under the church," Elias said. "We have to go down there." I swallowed hard. The basement was terrifying enough, but the tunnels beneath the church? I thought they were just an old myth. But now, nothing was a myth anymore. We grabbed our lanterns and descended the narrow stone stairs. Our footsteps echoed with each step. Clara walked ahead, whispering prayers. At the end of the tunnel, we reached a massive iron door. Rusty letters were etched across the surface. "Umbra Porta, the Shadow Gate." "This is it," Elias said. "Are you ready?" I took a shaky breath. "I'm ready." Elias sprinkled holy water on the door and began to pray. The door creaked open. The air inside was thick with the sharp smell of sulfur. Strange symbols were carved into the tunnel walls. Inverted crosses, eye-like figures, and in the center of a circle, one word, Malvaris. "Daniel," Elias warned, "don't get too close." But then we heard it, the sound of a door creaking shut behind us. We turned and saw a figure standing there, cloaked in black, face hidden in shadow, holding an old, leather-bound book. Its eyes were empty voids. "You're too late," the figure said in a voice that scraped like metal on stone. Daniel will be ours." Clara raised her cross and began to pray. Elias lifted his silver staff and commanded the figure to obey him in the name of Malvaris. The figure smiled. "It's already too late." And then, like smoke, it dissolved into the darkness. The walls trembled. I fell to the ground. Elias grabbed my arm and pulled me to my feet. "Run," he shouted. We sprinted through the narrow tunnel as stones fell around us. We barely made it back into the church and collapsed onto the cold marble floor. Behind us, the doors slammed shut. The candles along the walls were still burning, but their flames had turned black. "This is his mark," Elias said breathlessly. "We've angered him. He won't stop now." That night, we prayed until dawn. When morning came, I stepped outside to get some air. At the church's doorstep lay an old, burned notebook. On its cover, written in shaky black ink, were the words, "Daniel, we're coming for you. Get ready." I reached for it, but the moment my fingers touched it, a searing pain shot through my skin. I gasped and drew back. Elias rushed over, picked up the notebook, and began to pray. "This book might be their tool," he said. "We'll find out what's inside together." We opened it. The pages were filled with ancient Latin inscriptions. Elias scanned the text, and his face paled. "What does it say?" I asked. His voice faltered. "It says Malvaris Exalter." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "The rise of Malvaris." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. On one page there was a hand-drawn image of a child. Dark smoke swirled around the figure. The child wore a cross around their neck. My hand instinctively went to my chest. "Is that me?" Elias nodded, his jaw clenched. "Yes, Daniel. They're after you because you can hear the whispers. They want to use you to open the gate completely." Suddenly, from the shadowy corner of the room, we heard a sound, a low, guttural laugh. "Daniel, get ready." The cross around my neck grew hot, burning my skin. I clutched it and began to pray. The laughter faded, but the chill in the air remained. After that night, we sealed the tunnels beneath the church. But deep down, I know Malvaris is still there, watching, waiting. Prayers alone aren't enough anymore. I have to be stronger. Elias and Clara are teaching me everything they know, but time is running out, because every night the whispers grow louder, and I'm afraid. Part 1 is complete, but the darkness lingers. 3 more parts are coming soon. Don't miss them. See you soon.